It's good, he can stay here.
No, I'm just asking. He's sniffing the pizza, so I'm like, look at him. He's like
Bailey.
done eating, right? So give me a hand now.
Today I am so happy that I have a full-time filmmaker who has a master's in filmmaking from University of Southern California sitting right in front of me. Kalyan Sura.
Am I good on camera? Am I like terrible? Am I okay?
You're doing great.
I've never been in front of the camera. It's always behind. So.
What are you kidding me?
I thought I would always be a good actor until I realized that I wouldn't. Naivete was very important because I thought I would just come to the US, win an Oscar and go back to India. USC was the only school because George Lucas went there and I loved Star Wars. I did 4 big blockbuster films in 1 year. My first job working in the VFX industry after graduating was my dream job. I was animating Pikachu and Mewtwo on Detective Pikachu. When I was working with DreamWorks, I worked on movies like How to Train Your Dragon 2,
Whatever DreamWorks produced.
Peabody and Sherman and Penguins of Madagascar. And I wanted to make it a Telugu film because this was a story that is very dear to me and I wanted my parents to watch it without subtitles. And I got to interview with some of the biggest executives of Netflix.
I got to see a piece of mind of this unique Telugu director whose short film blew the mind of an entire auditorium. How did this filmmaking kida come?
A hit ratio for a successful producer is 1 in 20. Everything we do has a combination of hard work, stupidity, and luck. Again, I've seen people who with their first short film go to Sundance, get the best things possible, all power to them. But I don't think that is a model. It's very much an outlier. Great sportsmen always say, the games are won in training, not on the pitch. The pitch is just execution.
Does this work only for you or is this like a general applicable advice for other filmmakers as well here in the US?
For me, it's worked. Dreams are being measured with a dose of reality. Been there, done that, but nothing happened. And that's the story of so many projects around town. We are not in the 18th century or Renaissance era where, kings pay patronage to artists to keep creating their entire life. Any South Asian filmmaker, look up Tasveer. They are an amazing entity. They are the only Oscar qualifying South Asian film festival in the US.
How do you see VFX getting cheaper, more efficient, faster with AI and advancement? Are you already seeing these applications?
We have benefited from using AI in small terms. Like if you take VFX, one thing that had always to be done is rotoscoping. With one click, you can separate out the background. But when they use AI to completely replace the artist who's doing the rotoscoping, that is where the problem is. And if we are so afraid of talking about AI in art that we won't acknowledge the growth of it, that'll become a bigger monster because it'll eat up all other spaces.
We hear a lot of this viral content about nepotism. But I'll tell you, if you look at short films, right, everybody will be in prison for nepotism. Right?
Yeah.
The advice that I got in India at least was, bounded script leke chalo raste pe. In the US, I get the advice, why don't you move to LA? What do? I go to LA and I shout, hey, I'm here, guys.
In the United States, under the umbrella of our watchful guardians and gatekeepers.
Yeah. All the terrorist auditions that I get and a no from a person you look up to is also a lesson.
There are no no's in our industry. It's just not yet. But then the struggle is real.
Today, you were the second person to tell me that in the film industry, being a jack of all is a negative connotation.
Because I feel like looking at a lot of younger filmmakers, I mean, it's not like we are old or anything, but
we are not. I still need to be hired. Yeah, I'm still young, guys.
It's like you can start off as wide as possible, but to really make an impact, you narrow down and go deeper and deeper and deeper. It doesn't mean that you can't do one of the other things. Like James Cameron does submarine diving, but he's also a film director.
And a good Indian example is Farhan Akhtar.
Yeah.
He does everything. Being a jack of all is actually an attitude of getting things done so that you achieve the desired result that you want. I was being given horrible advice like, don't learn acting, go and sit in a movie studio for 1 month. The difference between actors and director writers, actor always thinks their face and body is the product. But their emotion and their presence in the moment
it's
and understanding is the product.
Some of the greatest actors like Amitabh Bachchan sir or even Chiranjeevi sir, Rajnikant sir, like their face, there's so much turmoil going on inside. And that is what we are trying to capture with film always. And I think this is a testament to what my parents did for me. Anytime I said I wanted to do this and they saw the passion that I had, they never questioned it. They were like, we trust that you know what you're doing. We trust that you know what you want. So whatever it is, we are going to take the hardship. Go.
I have a term for my parents in that sense. I call them unconditional enablers.
Yeah, that's so good. I'm getting a little emotional talking about it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I had no idea you had to leave India in between. Where does this challenge drive come from?
Oh God, dude, this is childhood trauma.
I've tried this a couple of times. I think because a lot of people don't know me and you because of our IMDb ratings, which is changing very soon. I think I love to share the story of how I met you for the first time.
Wonderful.
And the reason for that is meeting someone is of highest significance to me. Because you really don't know how or whether you will meet that person another time or not. So whatever that situation may be, I try myself to be very conscious in that moment. And then if you try to do that with every person, you lead a very conscious and, meaningful life.
That's something that I have to learn, but yeah, I like that.
Okay, so Kalyan Sura,
Yeah.
you are sitting in Seattle in my studio, but you hail from the Bay Area. Or not?
San Diego.
San Diego. Yeah. Okay, fine. San Diego. Fine.
Yeah. California.
Yeah. But you are here to pitch your web series to one of the most prestigious Southeast Asian film festivals, Tasveer Film Festival.
Yeah.
3 years ago, I think, 2022 or 2021, Tasveer Film Festival collaborated with Netflix Film Fund and sponsored 3 short films to be premiered in Tasveer Film Festival. One of them was Bepar, which was written and directed by Mukesh. I was one of the lead actors and that was also selected. And by all means and respect, the most memorable one of all was Those Bros Force. Not just the movie. We watched the short film. It ran for about 20 plus minutes or less. Actually, it was 17 minutes.
Yeah.
You had an interesting story about how much you had to cut it down from 21 to 17 and took you 15 days or something, 4 days or something.
Yeah.
Okay. More impressive than your movie was the interview that followed, where I got to see a piece of mind of this unique Telugu director whose short film blew the mind of an entire auditorium entirely in English.
Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that.
I'll tell you one thing that I find very cliched is when someone says this or he or she is the next big thing. I never understood that until the point I used it for you to my wife and I said, Mansa, that guy Kalyan is the next big thing. And it's all because of the way you think. So today is about exploring how Kalyan's mind works and how Kalyan has the potential to change the landscape of Southeast Asian representation in United States, in countries abroad outside of India, and the entire world, hopefully soon. Welcome, Kalyan.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. This was a very lovely and moving introduction. No, thank you. I think Tasveer has been a very big part of my life. And in a way, Seattle has been a very big part of my life for the last 7 years. So I'm extremely happy to be here sitting in this wonderful space that you created, to chat. I don't really love to chat about myself, but this given the topic of Jack of all, it's been lovely knowing you and let's talk.
This is the first time that you are in front of the camera.
Yeah, I mean, I thought I would always be a good actor until I realized that I wouldn't. And I've had some experience in the past. So anyways, this is, I guess the first time that I'm officially in front of a camera.
But you came very close to it early on in your life.
Yes, 9th class.
Can you share?
Yeah, I was cast to be in one of the leads in a kids movie back in India in Hyderabad. Day one, I was there a part of a whole group. The scene was very simple. We were sitting under a banyan tree and 3 hours later we were still sitting under that banyan tree and the director was yelling cut. It was 35 takes in. He was cutting because there was a lot of wind. There was not enough wind, this and all. And day 2, I quit. I was like, I can't do this. I need somebody who knows what they're doing.
So this was 9th grade, which means you were in a soft position to make a decision for yourself.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
My parents never forced me to do one thing or another.
So how did you end up on the set then?
So it was all due to my own interest. Like one thing that, my parents in a way kind of told me, they come from a middle class background. Mm-hmm. They've worked hard all their lives to provide for us and bring us from whatever their means to provide us a great education. And it was drilled early on to us that education is the only way where you can transcend your position. And they wanted us to be engineers and they wanted us to lead a good life. But the one great thing that they always did was they never stopped us from pursuing everything else. And that is where this idea of being an all-rounder kind of became very ingrained into me, because even though I was studying, which was the first priority, if that was going well, they never stopped me from doing anything else. And that was like from middle school, like even early primary school, that was what I was doing, participating in elocutions, debates, fancy dress contests, this and everything. And this film opportunity came as an extension of that in a way, because I was already known in class 5, 6, 7, and 8 as the all-rounder. And ninth class, this thing happened. I kind of like, I thought it would be interesting. I just wanted it. I coveted it. I didn't know why. I guess I wanted to win in that audition. I got through that audition. I kind of fell out of love immediately after day one and then got back to school and whatnot. So, yeah, in a weird way, it's now full circle.
Such an interesting story. How do you, as a director now yourself, do you think your friends from childhood or people who knew you as a kid would be surprised that you are doing so well in the art form that you are?
I don't think surprised is the right word, because again, like so it might feel to people who are listening that my glory days were in my 10th class, which might be true in a way, because like I fondly remember my high school years because I was doing so much. Like morning 5 o'clock, I was getting up, going to maths, science tuitions, like 5 to 8 in the morning, then coming back to school, doing all the things like school studies, and then participating in every single contest. So I think my friends had a lot of respect for what I was doing, even at that early age. And I kind of like felt like I had to keep that up. So I was pouring myself into everything I was doing. So grade 10 happens. I was like the best, highest achieving in terms of the marks. I was awarded the best all-rounder. I was given every damn award that my school could give me. And I think my friends always had very high expectations of me. They knew in a way, and I knew that I would always pursue something with full passion. But none of us knew that was going to be filmmaking. Yeah. And in fact, my parents wanted me to be a bureaucrat, like the IAS officers in India. And until second year of my engineering, that was what I wanted to be. I took public administration classes, and I was a course topper in public administration back when I was doing that. But it all changed, and I just poured myself into a different field, which became filmmaking and storytelling.
Do I know your product? So, I know what kind of bar you set for your work, and it is actually absolutely the best. And in that sense, if I say, do you do different things for the kick of doing it in the best way possible, or just to explore, but then by your nature, you end up doing some perfectionism kicks in, or some other, thing kicks in?
It's funny. I mean, that's a great question, because when I reflect on it, when I was like, my background comes from computer science engineering, and there was a time when I was doing coding, I hated it, and I just did it to, get marks and whatnot. But when I started coding for my own video games, I became a perfectionist. So it kind of showed me that if I was forced to do something, I don't care about being a perfectionist. But if I loved something enough, I wanted to do it the best possible way in my own means and whatnot. So I feel like everybody has this, if you really care about something, you will be a perfectionist in that. It could be just being a good pet dad, or being a great parent, or, if you love something, if you pour yourself into it, you will want to be a perfectionist, because that becomes how you express yourself. And I feel like that is where I'm at with filmmaking right now in my life, where this is how I express myself. Every story is an extension of me and the people that I love and the people that have invested so much in me. And when I put such a high bar on everything I do, nothing less will suffice.
That makes sense, actually. Love and care drive perfectionism.
I think this is my language of love for the people that I care, and my past and the projects that I care about. So I think anything less than perfectionism. I mean, perfectionism is a very fleeting word. It's just that pour your 100%, and your 100% today might be very different from your 100% tomorrow or yesterday. But if you can give it everything today, you can sleep happy.
A lot of guests that have come here, they are jack of alls, and definitely there is a bit of an overlap as to, what tricks they do. We've had directors, we've had multiple dancers, but each of their interviews is different because they come from a different perspective in life. They come from different set of experiences. And they also come from a different set of desires for life, which also drives. Like we always think we always think about the past, but a lot of times future also drives your current actions. And in that sense, to have you here, I have so many unique questions for you. But for that, I'll have to probably provide some background about you, just a highlight of you, and then we'll go chronologically as to how you kind of kept on adding those stars and medals onto your chest. You are a computer science engineer.
Yeah.
You have a master's in filmmaking.
Yep.
Specifically in direction.
Writing, directing, and VFX. But writing and directing definitely.
And you have worked as not just a tech lead for DreamWorks, but also as a VFX supervisor. And you also currently do that.
Yeah.
You write your films. You are one of those directors that is a writer-director. You are currently working on a feature film. You just got your web series pitch. TV series approved for a pitch tomorrow. Yeah. So best of luck for that. Yeah. And you've won possibly every award that your school could give. So in that, I want to ask a question. Yeah. Does your humility come from your care for the work that you do? Or is it something that you learned over time through experience of you are in a collaborative space where, a lot of jack of alls, because they are so good at a lot of things above average, they may come off sometimes as, I spoke to you about that. Like they may come off sometimes as pressing or sometimes as you're too perfectionist or, where does your humility come from? Is it your family culture or experiences?
It's very funny you say that, because I feel like every artist to really, especially when you're a writer-director, needs a level of arrogance. And I see I feel like I am very arrogant when it comes to my art. And to every other part of my life, being it my relationships or respecting people or collaborations especially, unless you respect people for what they provide and who they are, you can't really connect on a human level. And I feel like my humility comes in that regard. But when it comes to my art, where I have to make decisions about, say, Those Bros 4s or Jackie and Jalal, which I'm pitching tomorrow, I am very rigid into my vision. So I feel like there is a dichotomy there. Yes, I am humble, and I think it's definitely my rearing, like my upbringing in a way to respect people the way they are, definitely comes into relationships. But when it comes to my art, I think I'm like, there needs an artistic arrogance or this industry will chew you out. And I feel like that is something a thick skin has developed over time. But that's something very private. And only I am privy to that. And people who are very, very close to me are privy to that. Like, people who see me in and out working and struggling with my own art. But I think it's when I get to be arrogant in that space, which is my control space, it frees me up to be a good person, with other people. Yeah. So that's how I see it.
Are you misquoting meticulousness for arrogance in the decision? Because I don't think you are someone who would deliver the arrogant decision arrogantly. To make a decision arrogantly is a whole different point because it's your art. When I write something as a story, I can be arrogant or whatever with it, right? But to tell my entire team that after spending like 15 days on one direction, the way I communicate it to is a different thing, right?
It's probably be very meticulous, like you said, and be very respectful. Like you should know, I think this was a hard lesson for me as well when I learned that even if you are the sole originator of a project, like you write, you direct, you produce, you do everything, there are other people who are investing their life into it. And a project will mean different things to different people.
Right.
And what you take from it is not the same as what somebody else takes from it. Like for instance, in Those Bros 4s, I directed a 7-year-old girl. It was her first time in front of a camera.
I remember.
And what she took from that project is so different from what I take from the project. Because for me, it is the technicality of shooting with 2 cameras, of running a crew of 20 people, directing 10 kids and all. But for her, it was the wonder of being in an arcade space, playing here and there. So I think it is definitely meeting people where they are and respecting them for it. And that is what I think you hit it on the head when you said, if you are working with people, you have to respect them. And there is a certain language that you have to use to convey what you want to convey in a respectful manner.
This is amazing because I shared you the story of why we made Achille, right? Both Mansa and I primarily are interested in, we are actors, right? We have studied that, we are interested in that art form, we have invested time in that art form. But we were not getting good, screenplays to project our art. So we decided we will write it ourselves. Now, because I am the writer, I am the producer, I am the financer, I am the casting director, I am the costume person, there are still 40 other people who have made that 20-minute short film possible. Yeah. And what I learned, because I started the movie saying, the attitude, the arrogance, right? The novice. Every new thing you do, you have this new person attitude where it's like, now I'm going to do everything on my own and I'm going to be the boss. I will make the decisions. But guess what? Creativity does not need a boss. Creativity needs an outlet. And whoever is there to produce that outlet for you on the set is the boss of. That's what I learned.
Very true.
There were so many places where, as a writer and a producer, writer and the financer, I could press my director into a one direction. No, you have to do what I say. But there were so many moments of learning for me myself, and
that's
how I communicated was very important at that time.
I think that's a learning curve that everybody goes through, and I think there are ways, like either you embrace that, you take and run with it, or you kind of shut yourself out and you're like, I'm the king, I'm whatnot. And I've seen people of both kinds, and I've seen their trajectories. And hopefully I want to follow the first path where, you respect people for what they bring, their time, their talents and energies, which eventually is going to make your project better.
True. Even though I try my level best to keep the guest list in a, high variety, being in Seattle and United States and Indian and, Telugu and whatnot, I do get a very common theme of tech workers coming and sitting on that couch. Today, I am so happy that I have a full-time filmmaker who has a master's in filmmaking from USC, University of Southern California, whose work I have seen, I have liked, and I think is promising, is sitting right in front of me. Tell me, from that engineering, computer science story, how did this filmmaking kida come to you?
God. I think, as I said, I think story goes back 1998. No, I'm not going to bore you with all that. No, I think it all starts definitely from my parents wanting me to be an engineer and getting thrown into the deep end where, like, from class 8, I was waking up at 5 o'clock going into these tuitions to get into some of the best engineering schools in India. And every weekend was like a test. They had weekly preparations and weekend tests. In a very funny way, that is what I'm doing right now. Weekly, I prepare for a weekend shoot. So it kind of got trained there. 8th class, 9th class, 10th class, study for engineering. 11th and 12th. Again, I don't know if any of your listeners will care or know about this, but in Hyderabad, this was a big deal. There was an institute called Ramaya Institute. It was one of the best for IIT preparation and whatnot. And that was like morning 4:30 to like 10:30 or 11. So this was my life for 5 years, preparing math, physics, and chemistry. And that did not get me into IIT, but it got me into probably the next best thing or the best thing for me, a college called BITS Pilani, where it was, when I was studying, the only college in India where attendance wasn't mandatory. If you perform well in your exams, that was good. And I think that became such a boon for me because eventually, when I started teaching myself animation and filmmaking, I did not have to attend any classes. I could just write the tests, get good marks, while I could just teach myself animation and whatnot. But it all starts even before that because I was always interested in writing. Like I said, going through classes, all-rounder, essay writing competitions, elocutions, whatnot. But I never knew that was going to be the main thing for my life. Until I went to BITS Pilani and I saw this poster somewhere that said they have an internship program. They had an internship program with DreamWorks Animations. And it was a fully funded trip to US. I was like, okay, I want that fully funded trip to the US. That was my first motivation. Exactly. But I gave up very early because it felt very shallow. Year one, in my first year of engineering, I bought a computer, like I had my parents buy a computer and whatnot. And I tried to teach myself animation. It was too difficult. And I gave up very easily. And I think looking back at it, it was very shallow. I was like, I just wanted to go to the US. That's it. But thinking back at it, I still loved the creative side of things. There was a club called, like a student-run department called the Creative Activities Club. Mm-hmm. I joined that. I started writing. I started drawing again. I started exploring my artistic side. In a very weird way, in a completely technical engineering college, I found my way into the arts. And funnily enough,
This was Birla Institute of Technology, Rajasthan?
yeah, this was in Pilani.
Pilani, Rajasthan.
Yeah, that back then it was like the best private institute in India.
Absolutely.
Even now, I think it's like one of the top 3. So, funnily enough, my turn to filmmaking came because of a girl. And I was seeing her at that time. She was in electrical engineering. I was in computer science engineering. We did not have many common classes together. So we wanted to take a common class, and that became filmmaking. She chose the class. And I was like, sure, let's do this. And we started attending the classes. And I was completely blown away because seeing people talk to me as an adult, like teachers converse with students as adults, asking opinions about films and art. And when you are in such an objective field, something subjective felt completely out of the blue. And I immediately fell in love with filmmaking. And she and I, the girl I was seeing back then, and we co-directed a project together. It was a documentary. We went out into the fields of Pilani, we shot stuff, and it became a food documentary about food wastage. And that kind of changed policies about how food wastage was being treated in our dormitories. And it kind of showed me the impact that a film can have. And since then, I think I deeply, deeply fell in love with the process of filmmaking and telling. And of course, with the girl who now is my wife. We've been together for 15 years now. Married 5. But anyways, I digress. I think that, this time around, when I started teaching myself animation again, unlike the first time, I wanted to do it because I was in love with filmmaking. And I felt like I did not have actors around me, but animation was the only way I could tell stories. I could control every movement. And that is how I taught myself animation. And that was in my junior year, in my 3rd year. And I had to get into like Bits Pilani. Back in the day, we had our internet connection was like 250 kbps. We couldn't stream anything. I had to read manuals to teach myself Maya and all these tutorials. In my 4th year, I started teaching a class on animation because I knew how hard it was for me to learn. So I wanted to give back. And I was the only undergraduate instructor to teach a class on animation in that university. And I think all of this did pay back because when I was interviewing with DreamWorks Animations, all of this showed and they hired me. I think I was the only one that they hired from the batch. And that is how my foray from engineering came into a very technical role in an animation company. And then slowly the door was open. So I worked my way when I was a technical director at DreamWorks Animations. I was still writing Python code for them. But I kind of brokered a deal with my HOD saying that I'll write code during the day and I will animate during the night. And that came through. And 3 years at DreamWorks, it was a dream job. I was coding for them, but I was also animating on the side. And I started learning more and more about film history, filmmaking itself. And so I learned about animation, filmmaking, and all of that. On my days off, I started writing. I started exploring all my other artistic side in a way. I created a video game.
Did you have to fight for that, or was it just like asking or you were already like, or they didn't care, to be honest? Like, I think you could do whatever VFX on our systems. I don't care.
I think it was a lot about building trust with people, like in any profession. It's like when they saw that I was able to deliver what I had to deliver, and then they could realize that I think it also came at a moment of crisis where they needed extra help, and I became that extra help. And I could prove to them that on my own time, without hurting without not impeding their resources, I could contribute in a positive way to the output that they were generating. And
so one thing I'm curious about is, in the day, what was your job? And in the night, what were you VFXing?
In the day, I was writing Python tools. So I was coding predominantly in Python. I was creating tools so that... in the animation industry, there are people called technical directors, where every animation studio has its own... Okay, this is getting too technical, but every animation studio has its own pipeline, how movies are made. But then they also interface with third-party tools. Like, for example, Autodesk Maya is a third-party tool. But Disney, Pixar, DreamWorks have their own tools. And technical directors sit in between these, where they help facilitate communication between all of this. So essentially, I was writing Python code. And, sometimes I was even teaching artists how to write Python code, how to think algorithmically and all of this stuff. And at the end of the day, I was animating on some of these shots. So I've animated shots on movies like How to Train Your Dragon 2 and a bunch of other movies there.
Knowing the backend, what?
Yeah. Sorry.
Which movies?
There's a movie called How to Train Your Dragon 2.
I know that, but you worked on that as well.
Yeah, and I also
You did
animated
mention
it.
Black Men in Black and other movies as well.
So the timeline is when I was working with DreamWorks, I worked on movies like How to Train Your Dragon 2.
Whatever DreamWorks produced.
Peabody and Sherman and Penguins of Madagascar. So these were the 3 big projects that I worked on. I have a lot of distance from that moment. And I feel like it has, in a way, contributed to my journey. And if I was now in a different path, I would have looked at it with a lot more reverence. Now I feel like it has fed into a different funnel.
2 quick follow-ups
go ahead.
for you. One, animation doesn't work without voice.
Yeah.
What did you do for that?
For my own, I went old school film where it was all MOS. I just put an audio soundtrack and just animated on top of it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't want to make it seem like you were the only VFX guy on Madagascar and all those things.
No.
So as a filmmaker,
Yeah.
right? Say I want to make a VFX film tomorrow.
Yeah.
How do I assess if I have just one VFX shot versus the entire movie that is animation?
Yeah.
How many guys need to work on it and what are different roles they
at
play?
any point, I think hundreds and hundreds, I don't know the right number, but at least a crew of like 500 or 600 people usually works at different phases on one of these films, these big animated blockbusters. But that said, like last year, Everything Everywhere All at Once, like 2 years ago, I think the VFX team was 5 people. So there are ways to do it in different ways, but for a full animation film, that's unheard of. You need hundreds of people to do that.
See.
And I was a small part, like a small cog in the whole machinery. But it influenced me a lot more than it might have influenced a lot more people.
Absolutely. I think what is not important to me is your part of contribution in the movie, but the contribution of that work into who you are today.
Yeah.
And I think that played a very
definitely.
important role for you. So then the bug was entirely taking over, metamorphosis was happening.
Definitely. And I think in my off time, I could never stay still. I was like always trying to put myself out there, challenging myself in a way. I started creating.
Where does this challenge drive come from?
Oh God, dude, this is childhood trauma. Always. I think the idea of challenging myself was deeply ingrained in, for lack of a better word, seeking validation. To, I don't know if it's just proving myself, but every time I won something, I felt like I got a positive response from my friends, from my family and whatnot. And when that shapes you from a very early age, it becomes very hard to get rid of that. And I feel like that kind of fed into me wanting to challenge myself always, wanting to prove myself, even though there is no audience to clap for me right now. I am the only audience I do that for. And I feel that keeps me relevant and poised right now, keeps me on my toes when I'm in a field that is so challenging, that so demands your best every single day. I don't know if I could survive if I did not have that kind of a training.
Today, you were the second person to tell me or educate me on that in the film industry, being a jack of all is a negative connotation. And I had no idea because I definitely see it as a strength. And what I'm learning from my own feature film experience of marketing it, etc. If you are not a jack of all, you're not in business, brother. You have to content create. You have to understand different tools of publications. You have to, so many things you have to do. And being a jack of all doesn't mean like you have a few set of skills, special skills you do. Being a jack of all is actually an attitude. An attitude of getting things done so that you achieve the desired result that you want out of whatever drives you, wherever you want to go with that, right? Do you agree with that?
I agree with what you said, the sentiment and the attitude, for sure. Especially when you're working in the indie space as a director, producer, you need to understand the nuts and bolts of everything. And you need to be able to apply the nuts and bolts of everything into everything you do. But then when you look at how you are, in a way, categorized, because we work in an industry that likes packaging people. You know, it's all about packaging. And if they can sell you as something, they will sell you as something. If they can sell you as a horror writer or a TV writer or a feature writer, it's people are looking for boxes that they can put you in and sell you on. And when you say, I don't fit into this box because I'm a jack of all, I write horror, I write sci-fi, I write drama, I write comedy, immediately there are red lights blinking on every person's meter, because they don't know how to categorize you. And I feel like the US, in a way, more than India, like in the Telugu film industry where I come from, and in Bombay and whatnot, like we have writer directors dime a dozen, but here I've heard from many people that if you have like 5-6 credits as a writer director on short films, it's not looked down as an advantage. It's almost like you're only self-producing, but they want to see how they can package you. If they want to package you as a director for TV series, they want to see that you've directed somebody else's work. So yes, you are a jack of all trades when it comes to understanding this, but there is also a very performative element of it, which needs somebody else to see you for how you want to be portrayed.
But I have a different view of this. I do agree. I'm not disagreeing with the fact that this happens.
Sure.
I disagree with why it happens because I have a flip side point of view on this. Are you assuming that a jack of all will not be able to prioritize? I think we are. Because what a jack of all is showing you is actually their tenacity and persistence to be able to do things that may not necessarily be in their wheelhouse, to still provide a product out there. If I as an actor decide that I'm not getting good screens, why should I go and work for a script that I do not agree with? Why should I act as a misogynist character if I don't agree with it?
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
if it's not an interesting character.
No, I totally
right?
agree with the sentiment that you're coming from
Right.
again. And I feel like what I've seen so far, I think a lot of the media landscape is changing right now, especially with content creators who do everything themselves. But I think there is a traditional mindset that, the studios or people would need somebody to perform a certain task. Like, it's almost like they're looking for puzzles in a jigsaw puzzle. And if you fit that puzzle, you're great. But if you're like doing too many things with too many edges, it might not work in the best interest of things. And again, there are so many assumptions that are coming from me in this
Absolutely.
space. But yeah.
Yeah. We are sharing opinions.
Oh, yeah,
Both of us are only sharing opinions that are
yeah.
based on our true experiences.
Yeah.
We are not making shit up.
Yeah.
But I do actually deeply care about this topic because the thing is, both you and I are impacted by the fact that we are in the United States.
Yeah.
We represent the Southeast Asian diaspora, even though my vision is not to only make Hindi or Southeast Asian movies. I want to make movies about ants. I want to make movie about random things. I don't care.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we are subjected to certain
the
elements that we
stereotypes of
need
being
to.
South Asians and all of
We
that,
need
yeah.
to, because if we don't start that way, the odds are way, way, way against us.
Yeah.
So my point is like, will we come to an inflection point at some point of time? Are you seeing this inflection point in younger directors or younger actors or musicians that you're working with, where people are thinking, yeah, let's not worry about, having people in the box like those 5 people.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure a 5 people team that made everything everywhere. You must have seen those YouTube videos, right?
Yeah.
They are doing everything from lighting, VFX, editing, etc.
For sure,
etc.
yeah.
So tell me, who is a better filmmaker? That team or the team that made a buster on the box?
I mean, I think at that point we are crossing many lines, and when we are talking about who's a better filmmaker, but I think there is a paradigm shift in understanding our own value in the media landscape and the marketplace right now. Because I feel like looking at a lot of younger filmmakers, I mean, it's not like we are old or anything, but the generation...
Dude, I still need to be hired. Yeah, I'm still young, guys.
It's like looking at people, let me put it this way. There is a generation of creators who grew up with Instagram, who grew up with YouTube. This was not the case when we were coming up, because YouTube was still very nascent when we were growing up.
Orkut was the first one I used.
Exactly, right? So I think creators who find their value on Instagram, on doing a lot of things, have a very different perception of the traditional media. I think the traditional media is seeing the effects of that when people are not caring more about longer form content and just watching shorts. So I feel like there is a paradigm shift in the generations now understanding their own value and being a jack of all trades. Again, it's not like we are not. Like you said, we are directors, writers, producers. And if you look at it, any independent director, be it Chris Nolan or Rajamouli from India, they have to know everything. And they have to start off as a jack of all trades. But how do they grow out of that? And
Absolutely.
it's like this, you can start off as wide as possible, but to really, really, really make an impact, you narrow down and go deeper and deeper and deeper. It doesn't mean that you can't do one of the other things, like James Cameron does submarine diving, but he's also a film director.
Absolutely.
So,
and a good Indian example is Farhan Akhtar.
Yeah.
He does everything.
Exactly.
And very well.
Exactly. But also they don't dilute their focus. And ultimately it becomes that, like, you are a jack of all trades, I'm a jack of all trades in a way. But there is something that we focus on, or else the quality will suffer. Yeah. And we also, I think something that I am learning more and more is that I started out in a way where I was like, so again, arrogance might not be the right word, but I was like, I want to do everything and I can do everything, and I wanted to prove myself to that. But there is something that I'm missing, which is I can do production design for my own films, but it will not be the same as somebody who's dedicated their entire life studying production design and doing production design. And I've learned these lessons again and again on film sets, where my production designer schooled me. But yeah, I think there is a healthy respect to give for people who are deep in their knowledge. While we are jack of all trades, we are accepting of our responsibilities and our duties of performing what we need to do. There's also a healthy respect to give for people who are like deep in their knowledge space, and to accommodate for that.
That's amazing. Actually, all of these lessons that we share, the opinions and discussions we had, could apply even in a capitalistic setup where you're in a company.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's a bunch of people trying to produce an output.
Yes.
And that output is sponsored by one or two people, and there is some kind of power dynamics that they all have to manage. But at the end of the day, the product needs to be out of the door, and it has to be palatable.
Exactly. And I love that metaphor, because at the end of the day, the way the industry sees films is a product. You know, it is a business. It is a product. It is something that you need to sell to the audiences.
Yeah.
And, you know, the producers, the studios, the directors are different players with different power pulls attached into making that product. So yeah, you're right.
I know I got my lesson directly firsthand from you. I remember back in the day,
Ouch.
few years ago, I had sent you a script which I passionately wrote. I still think it is not one of the best scripts, but it is one of my first scripts that I wrote, and I'm still passionate about that story. That's not the point. The point is, when I met you and I saw you, I was like, I want that person to direct my story as a writer, not as an actor. I want that person to direct my story. I think they will be able to do justice. Like you said, production designer will be able to do a better job of what you want to do. So when I called you, you were so generous. You're so nice.
I love engaging with the
Yeah,
stories.
absolutely. You were so encouraging. Even though I was just an actor for you in that time period, you only knew me as an actor of paper. You were so generous. You said, here's my email, send me the script and everything. And after reading the movie, you called me back and we had a chat, and you asked me like really hard questions. And I'm someone who is a professional at a very good level. I have been in the United States for 14 years. I work in really high, with higher people. I know the trades of, the game and, things like that. And I still remember you said, great, everything. I can do it. What is your plan with the movie? Today I have a different view. That day, instantly in my head, my one sentence went, and it was like, what's the plan? It's my story.
Yeah.
Who cares about the plan? It's my story. But as you mentioned, even though it's my story and I am the financer, you are going to put an important part of your life into that story to bring it to life.
Sure. Yeah.
And I saw that. When you explained it to me very politely, I saw that. And I was like, yeah, 1 second mein mujhe mera corporate world mein chala gaya. And I was like, acha, I have to be a little, meticulous about it. I have to kind of plan it.
I'm really glad that you took that lesson, because that's a very hard lesson. And that is the lesson that I've been taught. And I try to put that out to other people, because I think Love It or Hate It Film School beats you out in many different ways. And I feel like understanding that, and you took really great lessons from it, and not many people do. It's like, unless you really have a plan, it's even for a short film, if you're doing it right, you're investing a lot into it. Yes, there are short film contests where you do a whole film in 48 hours. The film will have a life of its own and whatnot. But more often than not, you're putting so much time and energy and effort into something, and money into something. Unless you have a plan, it's going to be really hard. Whatever that plan is, it need not be going into the S-tier film festivals like Sundance and whatnot.
Yeah.
It could just be releasing out on YouTube and impacting somebody and just understanding where you are in that process and what you want out of it is going to be very, very crucial. And I think that was what I was getting at. And even now when I'm talking to I've had the good fortune, and I'm greatly indebted to a lot of people who've given me opportunities, but I'm also leading a few short film rooms where I'm helping people facilitate, develop short films and all.
That's
These are
amazing.
the questions that we ask, it's like, what is the plan? What do you want the film to do for you? What do you want to do for the film? And unless you really understand how you coexist with your product, it's very difficult. And I feel like just, putting those in words will really help a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm glad that helped you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, I say this with great humility that not a lot of people put me in a position where I question myself, where like, oh my God, why didn't I think? I feel almost embarrassed, like, why didn't I think of that? And I was really like, that was the day when I decided that, okay, if I am not a successful business-minded creator, I will not get to be a creator.
Yeah.
Same for the artist. If I'm not a business-minded or a clear artist, I will not get to be an artist for a long time.
Yeah, that's very true.
I'll be an artist in my home.
I love how you put that, because getting one film done, putting your life's resources into one film and making it is great. But if you want a career, there is a commerce element attached to it. We are not in the 18th century or Renaissance era where, kings pay patronage to artists to keep creating their entire life. So we still
I hope
need
they
to
do.
Yeah. But I feel like definitely the commerce should not drive the art we create, but we have to be commercially minded. Or at least, this is me speaking in this stage of my life.
Absolutely.
Maybe 2 years ago, I would have had a different view. 5 years ago, I would have had a different view. Maybe 2 years from now, I'll have a different view. Hopefully, which is enriched by my experiences. But that is where we are at,
No, absolutely. I completely agree with you. And I will tell you how I gave it back, by the way. I want to settle scores. Last week, someone reached out to me, local Telugu, first-time filmmaker with a short film script, amazing script. I was really interested. They saw some posters of my feature film and they were like,
congratulations on that, by the way.
Thank you so much. And they were like, I can understand that, right? They were like, oh, my story, I want that guy to play. Probably it'll be like so nice, right? He's in Seattle. He's already like in a feature film. It'll be so nice. Why wouldn't he do that? And I showed interest as well. I said, yeah, I would love, because the topic was super interesting. So I went with the script first time. I wanted to read the script. I read the script. But then reading the script, I realized instantly, having made the film because of you, having made a film myself entirely, end to end, casting everything, I knew that story is great on paper. Yeah. But what will happen, how will it be made, is one question. Secondly, I have no idea what the plan is for the movie. Yeah. And I am at some point in juncture in my life where I am not looking for creativity for fun. Yeah. I have enough opportunities alone and with my family to have fun creativity. Yeah. So now I'm looking to measure my time into something that translates into a direction that I want to go to. Yeah. So I gave them the same question. I said, what is your plan? Yeah. Same thing. And they took it very well as well. Nice. They said, okay, fine. Can you help me find new time actors, first time actors? And that's I did great. That. And, so I would love to, do something like that. And that's what the whole show is about. Nice, I hope millions of people listen to this and get the same lesson that a no from a person you look up to is also a lesson. Yeah. That's what I want to say.
Like something that I learned, and it's a very hard thing to implement. It's like there are no no's in our industry. It's just not yet.
Not yet.
So it's going to manifest in some way or another.
Absolutely.
Like just keep trying.
Moving on to the something that you mentioned while you were chatting about the hardships of making a film, right? Yeah. We'll go back to your DreamWorks.
Oh, sure, definitely.
when you were talking, I vividly remember everything that you said about that those Bros Force experience. You said at one point of time you had to call in every friend that was available in the United States, no matter what, from the USC alumni pool to help you make that movie. Yeah. Why would they come and help you? What did they do in school? That's number one. And number two, how did you pull it off? Was that one of the most difficult things to pull off?
I think there were a lot of difficulties. Like with every short film, short films get made because they are passion projects and they are labors of love. There is no return on investment on short films. The only reason a short film exists is because of the creator's will to bring it to life. So anybody who's ever done a short film, it's a miracle that they get made. And for this, even though I had the backing of Tasveer and Netflix, which had a weight to itself, there was still things that I wanted to do for the film, because Those Bros Force is a Telugu English film, and I wanted to make it a Telugu film because I remember I wanted to. This was a story that is very dear to me. It was a personal story, and I wanted my parents to watch it without subtitles. And for that regards, I wanted to look for Telugu actors in the US, and I started reaching out to every association that I knew. Like SAG here is a big deal in the US. So I was looking for SAG actors who were proficient in Telugu and who would fit my role and all of that. So I was calling every other person that I knew, emailing every Telugu association that I knew for actors, auditioning people. And that was one challenge. And the second part of it, definitely when coming back to what we did in school, like this is where I feel like the relationships that we build, no matter what. For one thing, to my own detriment, I was very giving in film school. Like anybody needed any help, I was there. And especially because of my background in VFX. And a lot of people in the school wanted a lot of VFX, but they didn't know how to approach it. So I was helping out every single person that I knew with VFX or consulting and that and this, and being very generous with my time. I think it came naturally to me to help out people that I like and projects that I like. And that is the reputation that you build, right? And even people that I had not worked directly with in film school knew of that. And film school is a very small world, and word spreads like fire. And that fortunately I was in circumstances where I could be generous, and only some of my generous side showed. And a lot of people kind of heard of me, and when I called them, when I reached out to them, they knew of me, and they could like pass on references, and they were eager to help out. And again, with short films, it's how good the concept is, how passionate you are, and what is going to happen with the short film. If you know these three things, it's easier to sign on them. And that is how, like, most people that I signed on for my film are people that I already knew from USC. And again, we complain a lot about this industry being very incestuous, about working with the same people over and over and over again. But if you're trusting somebody with your life, it would rather be people you know. And making a short film is all about trust. So that is why we see a lot of people doing, work with repeat workers. So yeah, that is how I reached out to USC, because I'd seen them work in some capacity. And I knew the rigorous training that they had been given at USC. And there is something that I could trust in a pension. That is how USC helped me. And that is how I could like my DP Adriana, I'm so grateful for her because of the things that she could pull off, like with a crazy crew. We had such a small crew, but she still made it happen. And again, without taking too much time, we shot this during the pandemic, and there were so many scares. Like 12 hours before our shoot, we lost our AD because of some conflicts. And the first day of our shoot was shooting 1 hour away with 10 kids who needed an AD. An first assistant director, and we did not have that. And one day, like 4 hours before the shoot, we didn't know if we were going to have our DP because of a COVID scare. So with all of this, pulling all of this together, we were still able to, we still managed to pull together just because of the trust we had in each other, and, the preparation and all of that good stuff. I'm getting a little emotional talking about it. Yeah. It was a challenge. Every short film is a challenge. Yeah.
I know. I remember you spoke about it very passionately. Probably that translated, right? That thing is stuck with me because the way you described it.
Thank you.
And at the same time, I had empathy being on another short film where things were going wrong. Obviously, every short film things go wrong. I was very proud.
Thank you.
Last month, when Mansa and I were flying on Alaska Airlines, and I was looking for some fun entertainment on Alaska Airlines entertainment info session, whatever that TV is. And I saw Those Bros Force on it. I took a picture immediately and shared it with you.
Thank you. Thank you. It means a lot.
So anyone on Alaska Airlines, please go check.
Thank you.
What are other places where they can watch Those Bros Force?
At this moment, we are trying to make it a feature film. So it is
That's the feature film you're working on?
There are two. There are 4 feature films that I'm
my God.
working on
Okay,
right now.
so I want to come to your feature films, but let's go back to your DreamWorks journey. Very rare that, especially someone from Hyderabad, deciding, chalo, मैं masters करूँगा, United States में जाके filmmaking में masters I will do. Very rarely some people do that. And when they do it, they are dedicated people who do really well in their career. That is one for sure. But why did you not just start making like films in Hyderabad or go to a film school there? I have been given horrible advices, like I told you, right? At one point of time, I was going to quit and go to India to learn acting. I was being given horrible advice, like don't learn acting. Go and sit in a movie studio for 1 month. Things like that. I don't subscribe. I have not sat in Amazon and Google offices for 1 month. I studied and I gave interviews and I know tracks.
I think that answers a lot of it. Coming to the US, I also got some advice. It's like, instead of spending a lot of money, 1 crore for film school and whatnot, why don't you make your own film? You'll learn so much more. And no slight to any people who did that. I know many people who did that, who got into it, who got into the weeds of it, learned with short films. I think Tarun Bhaskar was a great example in the Telugu film industry, how he made short film after short film. He made an amazing film called Pelli Choopulu, one of my favorite films. But for me, as I said, my parents kind of impressed on me that education is the only way that you can really progress and break borders in life. And that was very strong with me. And whenever I thought about filmmaking, I wanted to do it in a very structured way. And for no reason, at that point, again, because of me creating video games, writing and all of that, I wanted to look at the US to see if I could get into any game development program. So I was looking at a few schools like Carnegie Mellon, which had an amazing entertainment technology center. So I gave my GRE, I gave my TOEFL, got really great scores on that. I was looking at these schools. But then at that point, I was also considering, and again, no slight to the schools in India, FTII is great, Whistling Woods is great. But I was also looking at some of the best schools in the world. And USC was the only school that I really kind of, because George Lucas went there and all of these things, and I loved Star Wars and whatnot. USC fell in my radar. And it was so funny that I was applying for a spring admit, and of all the schools in the US, all film schools, only USC had a spring admit. And believe it or not, USC was the only school that I applied to. Usually people apply to 4 or 5 master schools. I applied to only one. I was like, I built my profile for this. If I get in, I'll go. And that's it. And fortunately enough, I got into USC because of the profile that I built. And I did not question anything else. And I think this is a testament to what my parents did for me. It's like anytime I said I wanted to do this and they saw the passion that I had, they never questioned it. They were like, they didn't know anything about film. They were government employees from India. They had no connection to the film industry, nothing. When I said I wanted to work for DreamWorks Animations, they didn't know what DreamWorks Animations was, but they saw how I thrived at DreamWorks Animations. And so again, it's a matter of trust. They trusted what I was doing. They trusted that I knew what I was doing. And even though they didn't know anything about masters or filmmaking or USC or whatnot, they knew nothing about it. They were like, we trust you. We trust that you know what you're doing. We trust that you know what you want. So whatever it is, we are going to take the hardship. Go study. If it's the best school in the world, go study. There were so many people who advised them against it. They're like, you're going to go into debt. You can't fund this. There's no life in film. That, this, and that, this. But even for one instance, my dad and mom didn't say a word against it. They're like, go pursue your passion.
I have a term for my parents in that sense. I call them unconditional enablers.
Yeah, that's so good. That's true. Yeah,
unconditionally enabling.
And my wife now has taken up that mantle too, enabling me unconditionally, and we are nothing without them, honestly. So.
I'm thinking tons of hot questions are brewing in people's mind when they hear someone not come on an L1 or a B1 or a H1 visa as a tech consultant in a tech company, as a software engineer, etc. You came to USC, you gave your reasons for why USC is great. Everybody knows why USC is great and who went there. George Lucas went there, etc. Shows your determination that you only chose one school. Shows the clarity of thought which I would expect from any great director. But then let me ask you the question you asked me 3 years ago. Did you know what your plan was after graduation?
Yeah,
with all the constraints around visa, immigration, and the randomness.
Dude, I'll tell you, I was so stupid. And I think naivete is very important when you're starting out on something new. Like if you aren't naive, like if people weren't naive, they would never have set foot on those boats and going into the ocean to explore.
Too much friction.
Yeah. Naivete was very important because I thought I would just come to the US, win an Oscar and go back to India. That was my plan.
That is still the plan, but it may take like a decade.
For sure. Yeah. No, because I didn't know anything about the visa. And again, coming from India, there was nobody that I could reach out to. I did not know anybody at USC. There was nothing. I was truly going into uncharted territory there. And I was like, sure, let's see what happens. And I was very naive and like wide-eyed, doe-eyed there when I came here. I didn't know anything about the visa stuff and all. And in fact, in my first year itself, I got an offer from a production company to come work for them. I was super excited. I was like, I'm going to take a semester off. I'm going to work for them because that is why I'm in the US. And then the hard reality starts. Like I get an info from my university saying that I'm an international student and I can't do that. I can't take a semester off or whatnot. And that is when the first breaks of the visa situation and all started hitting me. But no, it's the visa situation and the immigrant situation is a reality that a lot of people are not educated about, especially when it comes to film school. And for those who know about the H1 system and the F1 system, people who are coming on an F1, a STEM degree, they have a 3-year OPT.
Yeah.
But for a film program, there is only a 1-year OPT.
Because film is not science,
It's not
technology,
STEM.
engineering or management, which
Yes.
is STEM.
So we have only 1 year. If not, we go back. Everything we do has a combination of hard work, stupidity, and luck. And all of them kind of played into it. I had interviewed for a few jobs. Like after graduating, I had a 1-year OPT. And I had interviewed for a few jobs. And if I had gotten them, I would not be in this position today. I failed. Like I could not ace those jobs. I got rejected from those jobs, which had me choose my B choice, which eventually helped me build my career in a way that I did not expect.
Which is the B choice?
So essentially, I love every job that I worked. My first job working in the VFX industry after graduating was my dream job. I was animating Pikachu and Mewtwo on Detective Pikachu. So even then, I had a first choice job, which I'm not going to name, which I got rejected from. And that was heart shattering. I was like, damn, I wanted that. I thought I was so good for it. But in the long run, the VFX jobs I did, I did 4 big blockbuster films in 1 year, which would have never happened if I were in my A-choice job. And all of this kind of fed into my immigration situation. Of course, being on an F1 OPT was difficult. Part of the reason that I had to go back to India was because my OPT was over. But then things coincided. This is where the hard work meet dumb luck comes.
I had no idea you had to leave India in between.
So I had to leave. Well, my F1 OPT was ending. I had 3 months left on it. But this was when my USC thesis film,
I see.
one of my friends who was directing a film in India saw that USC thesis film and he wanted me to help out in India. And I was like, I still had 3 months of runway on my OPT, but I was like, this is an opportunity where I can go and learn the film industry in India. I went back there on I kind of like gave up 3 months of my F1, went back to India, learned there, came back to the US on an H4 after I got married. My spouse was on an H1.
So you both came together on H1 and H4, or she was already on H1 here?
So she was already on an H1.
Okay.
I was on an F1. We are throwing a lot of random numbers and words here. But essentially,
so F1, you were on a student visa. She was on a work visa.
Work visa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She works in tech.
She works in tech.
She works in tech. So it was easy for her to maintain and get a H1.
Yes.
Not relatively easy.
Yeah.
Compared to a filmmaker.
Oh,
because
definitely.
I've been a petroleum engineer myself. In the United States, I got a master's degree in petroleum engineering. Same story. Even though if it is a STEM program, no petroleum company will sponsor your visa.
Yeah. That's true.
Because of,
Yeah, fortunately, she works for one of the big tech companies.
That's great.
And in a time where, the layoffs weren't common.
Yeah.
So again, this is fortune, luck, timing,
So if I'm
whatnot,
not wrong, sorry to say, but probably I'm the first person to say this. So the same person who got you interested into filmmaking also saved your filmmaking career again.
Oh, I mean, not just again, every single day.
Every single day.
The reason I'm able to do this every single day, the reason I'm able to stay sane doing this every single day is definitely because of her.
Kalyan, you're awesome. Your Instagram is awesome. Everywhere I see people talk about you, they just speak awesome things about you. Your films are doing great. I'm pretty sure your life is amazing and your family members are super happy with every decision and every behavior of yours or whatever is happening. So tell me more about how a person or an artist at your stature has to rely on family members who care as deeply about your passion as you do.
Yeah. I think thinking about stature, again, I feel still very much at the start of my journey. So there is a lot more to achieve, a lot more to do, but then the struggle is real. Like, every person in my life, be it my parents who made those decisions for me for the first 18 years of my life and who are unconditional enablers, my uncle who lives in Atlanta who supported me wholeheartedly when I came to the US, and my brother who took up the mantle of providing, being the torchbearer for the family during any financial difficulties. They've played a huge, huge, huge part in my life to free up my mind to focus on what I'm doing. But the biggest sacrifice is definitely from the woman who got me into films and who is constantly supporting me. And without them, I think, like you said, Instagram, Facebook, film festivals are great. They show us the highlights. And that is what most people use them for, right? They are highlight reels. But the suffering and the anxiety and the midnight wake up that nobody sees, when you get a reject from a film festival that you really, really wanted to get into, or you get rejected from that fellowship again and again and again. Only few people bear this. And it takes so much patience and determination to be with an artist, and it's also, they see how much of ourselves that we pour into our art, and to sometimes still be encouraging and not just tell them, again, you work in tech, you're a jack of all trades. I worked in tech, and if I had to choose a different career, I would go back to tech. And knowing that I can work a decently paying job in tech, and knowing that I can be that second support for the family financially. And even then, when she comes to me and she says, don't do that. You're investing your life in something that you love. Do that.
It's easy to say to you that, hey, why don't you just, spend 10 hours working as a VFX, you'll make some money, right?
Exactly.
But your partner, who's, again, an unconditional enabler, will not do that.
No, I think the only reason why she might tell me to do something else other than writing is when she sees how much I'm hurting, when I'm not able to, make a certain thing happen.
So how do you be conscious of her contributions and give back while you're still patiently waiting for that ultimate success?
I think we find our own ways to give back, because there are certain things that we can do right now. Like, at least for me, speaking about myself, there are some small ways that I can give back. It might not be the same financially, it might not be the same in certain regards, but there are things around our life that I can take care of and I can provide right now, and knowing that this is not going to be our life for the foreseeable future.
True.
Things are going to change in the future, hopefully, touch wood.
Absolutely, yeah.
But just being that element of support for her when she needs it, and also showing that I'm doing something that I love. Something that she can also care about and she can feel proud about is something that I can give. And of course, there are many other things, like in a relationship, like, there are so many things that you give and take and whatnot. So things like that would definitely, at least for me, things the way that I can give back to her. Yeah.
Back in Rajasthan, the onus and the weight of choosing a common thing to do was on your wife.
Yeah.
Then girlfriend.
Yeah.
She chose filmmaking. There has to be a reason why she chose filmmaking, either for herself or for you. Which one?
No, for herself. I think she was always into photography, and she was always into, she loved poetry. And even to this day, I feel like I am too literal. She thinks on the metaphorical level. So I feel like poets think on a metaphorical level, and she gets poetry better than I do. I get stories and little stuff. She is a poet in that regard, and she always loved photography, and she was always entranced by that form of art. And I think when we got filmmaking, because again, Tech University, there were only one elective course that was offered per semester and whatnot. Fortunately, it happened to be film, and fortunately she happened to pick that, and fortunately I got into film. So definitely she picked it because she was definitely interested in the artistic side of things and photography. She is my first filter, because in a way, I get like hundreds of different ideas. And because of the way I've grown up with animation, with cartoons, with video games, Hollywood, Bollywood, Tollywood, like I have ideas in animation, video games, sci-fi, drama, all of this. But I know that if she likes an idea, there is something. Like, I like every idea that I generate, but when she is my first audience, and when something sticks with her, I know that it is worth pursuing.
Yeah.
And time and again, with fellowships and things that I've won, it has showed me, it's kind of reinforced that she is the perfect barometer. And not to reduce her role in my life to that, but of course, she is very, very creatively focused. And I'm like, I keep telling her when the time is right, I still think she'd make a great director. So I'm like, you should explore that writing side of things, and hopefully with time, and when she can be freed up from some of her liabilities and responsibilities.
Absolutely. I would love to see you both partner on something, and I would love to see
what
the product.
Like, we did our first short film together, and after that, silently, both of us kind of vowed.
No, I agree with you. I mean, same for me, right? Like in our household, there are two creative people. Actually, Mansa herself is a jack of all. I'm going to.
That'll be great. That'll be a great episode.
Yeah, I'm going to interview her because I want to do that for Jagat. She's done so many other things that I would like to. But at the same time, the struggle is real, as you said, right? despite both of us being jack of alls, despite both of us being very focused on our common goal, which is, what it is, our modes of operations are different. Our trigger points are different. Our moods are different. Our reactions are different. Our worries are different. The things that she can be absolutely calm in, I will splatter. And things that I can handle, I feel like they are not that difficult, and she will completely lose her sleep.
That is why we are our own people, right? We are different people. We are like two different pieces of the puzzle, but we fit together. So.
So the point that I'm trying to make is like, to be able to achieve things that you desire doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have a particular type of relationship.
Oh yeah. Definitely.
Every relationship can find its way out to radiate energy. I feel like, it's a science student, it's like fusion. Two particles come together and they create energy that is more than the individuals put together.
Definitely.
And that's what's, amazing. So thanks for sharing a little bit of, personal private story. Going back to your filmmaker, we haven't even spoken about your feature films. Come on, man. So tell me, first feature film. Experience, dream come true or not? So someone like you, were you like, this is the first feature film I'll make, and I made it?
No. I mean, these are still in the screenplay phases. I'm still pitching them around, and once I get to direct them, I'll definitely come back and tell you how it feels.
Interesting.
But writing them is, again, as I said, like I pour my personal stories into every project. And each of these projects, each of these features that I've written, like I've written four features, like countless scripts, but 4 completed feature drafts that have gone to different places, and I feel equally connected to all of them, and hopefully I can pitch them around and get to make them.
Right.
And we'll talk about them once they're done more.
Absolutely. So I think meta question there would be, how does a director have 4 bound scripts and then, hope that only one gets picked up? Or what if 4 get picked up or none get picked up? What are your thought processes?
That's the dream. But I think at this point, in my life again, dreams are being measured with a dose of reality and understanding how the landscape works. The landscape in the Indian media works very differently. Like in the Telugu film industry, Bollywood works very differently from how we are being made to operate as South Asians in the United States under the umbrella of our watchful guardians and gatekeepers.
All the terrorist auditions that I get, and I mean, I'm being honest. Like a lot of people don't want me for any other role other than still. Like I thought things have changed, but
it's very sad.
They haven't. Is this a numbers game? Like a director should go with 4 bounded scripts and one will get picked up, or
it's always a numbers game. And I think this is something that. It did not hit me when I heard it first, but one of my producing mentors, faculty at USC, was a very acclaimed producer. And he told me that a hit ratio for a successful producer is 1 in 20. So you pitch 20 scripts around town. And if you're a very successful producer, one will be greenlit and made. So now you can imagine the numbers game. And this is something that I've been realizing with fellowships and, competitions that many of them that I've been a finalist into, some of them I've won. It's not one project, I have like 20 short scripts on the back burner. I send like 4 or 5 scripts here and there. And if you fall in the crosshairs of what people are looking for, you're fortunate. That means it is definitely a numbers game. You have to keep creating, you have to keep producing, and you have to put your work out there. And once the door opens, maybe you'll be able to, do
Does
more.
this work only for you, or is this like a general applicable advice for other filmmakers as well here in the US?
For me, it's worked. So it might work differently for people. Again, I've seen people who with their first short film go to Sundance, get the best things possible, all power to them. But I don't think that is the majority, and I don't think that is a model. It's very much an outlier. So definitely keep hopes up, but also keep expectations measured. And the one thing that we can really control is our creativity or the output that we can. Whatever happens with each of these projects, like I'm pitching something tomorrow, I don't know if that'll lead to anything. My first script that was a finalist in a Netflix contest, and I got to interview with some of the biggest executives of Netflix. Been there, done that there, but nothing happened. And that's the story of so many projects around town, so always have that measured optimism, but keep creating. That's the one thing that we can control. So if you have the means, if you have the support to create, just keep creating. If that is creating short films or animations or even writing scripts, just keep doing that.
I think one is successful when they stop getting excited about any new opportunity. Probably they have had enough experiences of these kind of, rejections and
I mean,
situations.
it's hard, because like you said, without desire, it's hard to function in our industry.
Absolutely.
And I feel like the excitement of opportunities, like if we had this interview like 6 months ago,
Yeah.
maybe I would have been in a very different
Space, yeah.
and my thought process would have been very different. But when things open up, you feel like the universe is acknowledging the effort that you're putting.
Absolutely.
And currently, I'm in a very different space. And maybe 2 months down the lane things will change, hopefully not, but it's very hard, like the ups and downs. And I think after a few years, when we draw a line, hopefully it is not this a sinusoidal wave, but more of a straighter line where you can just deal with the ups and downs.
No, I agree with you. I think that's a key lesson here. Any big task that you take that bears a lot of responsibility on you, and you already know that, right? What are those roles? Whether it's a president of United States or a filmmaker, a director in a film. These things, even with good cricketers, Virat Kohli, Rohit Sharma, when they do really well or bad, what they say is not, Aaj I had nice technique, or my technique didn't work. No, it's always about that mindset.
Yeah.
And I used to never get it. I used to be like, jhoot bol. As a kid, right? I used to jhoot bol raha hai. Clearly offside ke ball ko cheda hai isne. Why did he go on the offside? But why did he go on the offside is the fact.
Yeah.
Why did he go on the offside is something for Virat Kohli to think.
Yeah.
That's his mental
No, I think it's
challenge.
definitely, it's like, great sportsmen always say, the games are won in training, not on the pitch. The pitch is just execution. And this is what we are training for, life is training us for many things that will happen in life. Yeah, film is one very small aspect of life, man. Like life is so much more. There's so much happening in the world around, and we being able to, soak that up and positively contribute to the world is the final goal.
Right.
So everything is preparing us for that in one way or the other.
As a writer, when I wrote my first film, I know how it turned out. I never imagined how it will turn out. I'm happy. But I was worried all throughout that process. It was like sucking the life out of me every time, because when I write as a writer, I write like a screenplay. I even put lights there. They were changed. Like obviously the director came in and their vision was more sensible, but I wrote it a very descriptive way where I am watching the film.
Yeah.
Now, that anxiety I did not like throughout the movie. I love the product at the end of the day, but it's not the same as the vision that I had, which will always be in my heart.
Yeah.
Does that happen every time, and how do you deal with it?
So there was this book that I read recently. It's called Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. It's about video games. You should read it. You'll love it. It's about a game, friends and gaming and all of that, how they create a game. But there was this great line. It's like every artist, when they are starting out, there is a point where their taste exceeds their skill. Like we know what a great project is because we've grown up with so many of those, but we can't execute at that level yet.
Yeah.
And the only thing that you can do is create until you match your own skill, expectation and taste, and you will grow from there. And I feel like every artist will have that moment, no matter who it is. And if they say that doesn't happen, I mean, unless you're Ridley Scott, who is 80 years old and shoots with 11 cameras, you have that moment where, your taste exceeds your skill.
Yeah.
And the only thing we can do is catch up. And when I'm writing, obviously there is a movie in my head, but when every blank page is such a challenge, when I write the first draft of a script, like usually the way I work with drafts and numbering is a very technical level. So I have a V01 underscore D01 and all of that stuff. And usually for me, until I get to V01 underscore D010, I don't know what I'm writing. It happens like there is something in my head, it's not coming on page. But the difference between an amateur and a pro, again, this is something that I'm quoting from something that I read, is like the pro has failed more times than an amateur has tried. So you just keep going at it, and some way, shape or form, it takes form. And then you chisel it and you make it, you format it, you do that, you
Makes
do this
sense.
and you do that.
I want to attack this perspective from a different side, if you don't mind, because I really like how you're thinking about this. Whatever you said truly works out, and I will give you with an example in single person art or single person content. It works beautifully. I have been a stand-up comedian. I've performed for close to 10 years, opened for really good comedians across, in Seattle, and known comedians from India as well, Kanan Gill, Atul Khatri, etc. So I come from a very good experience as a stand-up comedian. And when I had a vision for a joke, just like a writer, right?
Yeah.
I'm writing a joke.
Yeah.
When I'm writing a joke, I'm not just writing a joke as a stand-up comedian. I'm also writing the reaction.
Yeah.
Because a filmmaker doesn't do that.
Yeah.
They don't have the luxury to see the reaction. As a stand-up comedian, I have to eat my SHIT on camera, in live person. But unlike a filmmaker, I have the luxury to do this every night for the whole week until I perfect it for Friday and then go kill it for the 15 minutes where everyone who saw me for the first time thinks, whoa, my God, this guy is going to be the best comedian in the entire world.
Yeah.
I cannot do that with films because I depend on the editor.
Yeah.
Now my vision, if exceeds the editor's skills who I am paying for, becomes like a big challenge, and it's almost like a problem for me because now it's a business where you told me you're going to do something for X amount and you're not able to meet or exceed my vision. How do you deal with that?
No, it happens so many times. Like I've seen so many projects ruined because of exactly what you said, because some collaborators do not have the same vision or skill set or sensibilities as you do. And I think this is where it goes back to either if you can edit it, you fix it, or it's sad to say, but there is an element of dumb luck involved in that as well. Again, this all comes from how you choose the people that you're working with. Are you vetting them? Are you trusting them because of their work or because of their name? And there are people who take chance on younger editors or people with no names because they've seen their work. So it is definitely, the first thing is collaboration, right? How do you build your team in, be it any successful startup? This is the breaking point or making point. When you're directing, you know that whoever you're casting is 90% of your directing work. When you're producing, when you're building a team, you know that the people you hire, it's not their experience, their attitudes towards each other and the work is what makes or breaks things. And in that matter, there are projects where I've hired editors for, I had to re-edit. But it was very respectful because they did a heavy lifting for me. They did the first edits, second edits. I came back, and fortunately, being a jack of all, I know the skills of using Premiere, using Avid, using these tools where I can go and really shape that project to my vision.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, not everybody has that luxury, especially when it comes to VFX. Let me give you an example. There was a project that I recently worked on where the VFX supervisor they hired failed to deliver, even though it was a very big production. And they came back to me and they wanted help, and I could help, fortunately, in this regard. But there are many cases where people will upsell themselves, and to no fault of their own, everybody wants to get hired, everybody wants to contribute. But when they fall short, if you have the expertise, go in and fix it without complaining. But if you don't, then unfortunately, it's a lesson in team building and in, figuring out the right credentials.
Absolutely.
And then this is where people go back to the people that they worked with.
Absolutely. And that's an important point I want to touch is we hear a lot of these viral content about nepotism. They just use this word to kind of, get views and likes. But I'll tell you, if you look at short films, right, everybody will be in prison for nepotism. Right?
Yeah.
So there is some truth to it. Why do short film folks who have no commercial element to it, right, work with the same people? Because it is a collaborative art, because there is high amount of trust involved, because it's all passion and love. Even when you put 100 crores on a movie, the story is the same. And let's talk about the challenges of putting 100 crores on a feature film. I have learned something eye-opening. They were obvious things, but eye-opening things. Bollywood has a casting agency layer. Tollywood does not have a casting agency layer.
Yeah.
An old industry like Tollywood, I went and I spoke to so many people from the industry trying to figure out how I should get represented in Andhra and Telangana.
Yeah.
And I was told, go and sit in some production office.
There are boutique companies that are coming up right now, but it is no way as solid as Hollywood or obviously even Bollywood. Bollywood has a rich tradition of...
there's MCC, like there's known people who do international casting as well. Then another shocking thing I learned was, see, as a filmmaker, right, people talk about content creators and influencers. They have to keep up with the platform's algorithm and changes every 3 months and 2 months and 1 month. Guess what? Feature filmmakers will also have to do that now. Why? Earlier, movies that were never out in theaters could find OTT very easily in a comfortable deal. Now, especially in India, unless you have run theaters, there is no way you can be sold to an OTT platform.
Yeah.
And I spoke to many people about that as well. I thought like it was a natural course of evolution of the industry, though that is not the case. I think the controlling or the power is basically, deciding what really needs to happen. So as an upcoming director, international director, whose film you hope that shows up in US theaters in Dallas, in Mumbai in India, and somewhere in Abu Dhabi and Europe as well. How does the school even prepare you for these situations, or how do you think about that?
No, I think nothing prepares you for the situation, because especially when you're in film school, they, to their own detriment, they tell you to focus on your art and your craft, which is essential to create anything. It's like the art and the craft and know your own stuff, But the business side of things is something that you learn with hard knocks, because the business changes so frequently and so much. No school can teach you.
Yes.
And I think there are paradigms that could have been taught about network television in the US and whatnot, but all those paradigms are shifting right now. And every agent is trying to run after the next big thing. If that is Instagram influencers, if that is Quibi, if that is whatnot, that crash and burn, nobody knows what's going to happen. And I feel like at this point, if you are true to something, so this is what I totally believe in as a filmmaker, as an artist. If I can create content that is of personal significance to me, which has cultural value to the society, and which has commercial potential to keep my project afloat, to keep my producers afloat, these are the projects that are going to sustain, be it theatrical or be it OTT. And then it is a game of plugging in genres, stars, that and this. But if these three core values for me, again, these core values might be different for you and somebody else, if they are met, I'll be happy. And I can foresee with the experience that I have in the industry that it can lead to something that will help me fund my next project.
Beautifully said.
So be it India, be it West, be it Abu Dhabi or wherever, if something has all these three elements, especially if it's entertaining and inspiring, and if it has a commercial element, which most people are looking for, it's easier to sell. And for me as a creator, if it's of personal significance, I'll be more invested. And if it is of cultural value to the society, that is good for the art that we create, So if we have those guidelines and work towards those values, I think we can probably withstand the business.
I love how structurally you think about it, or you operate in general, I believe. Within your own framework, the third core you mentioned was commercial.
Yeah.
And that actually has contextual relevance as well.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
like,
sure.
how do you see it for a different country? Say India versus US. What is a commercial proposition, or you think for the same movie in different country?
I think these are things that change depending on context. And again, I am very nascent in understanding the business side of things. This is something that I've been learning very recently. But again, this is how you package an idea or sell a genre. Action films always traveled when I was growing up in India.
Right.
And that is because it's easily sellable. And that's a commercial element to it. A star obviously is a commercial element to it. So concept, star, and sometimes the burning issues in the zeitgeist, those can be commercial issues. Things like that. How can you, without sacrificing your art, involve things like this? And if you look at the greatest directors, like if you take India, look at Mani Ratnam, the way he makes artistic films with stars. And if you look at the OG K. Vishwanath Garu in the Telugu film industry, he made amazing movies with big stars like Venkatesh, like Kamal Hassan, So one should not prevent you from the other. Art should not prevent commerce, So really understanding the nuts and bolts of the commerce of the industry is important.
Very quickly, why doesn't that happen often nowadays? Is it the digitization of the aggregation of different components of what we call as film that has lost the realness of it, the music pieces? I remember Mani Ratnam sir, I should say, and other famous directors before our time actually use real, tabla, matkas and all that, which would give you a sense of the culture that you're talking about. Even here in the US, we used to, have quartets perform live. I know Seth MacFarlane, who I am, they've won more Emmys for their songs than for the show. And the reason they perform with a 40-piece orchestra. The songs that Peter, that's why I love that guy, because look at his vision, right?
Good morning, good morning. It's great to stay up late.
Yeah.
This weird guy who's socially inept and probably unacceptable and dangerous to this society is singing songs and that are powered by 40-piece orchestras that won Emmys back year after year, year after year. And that's the kind of art I love and I stand by. For any new filmmaker, the advice that I got in India at least was, bhai, bounded script leke chalo raste pe. In the US, I get the advice, why don't you move to LA? What do? I go to LA and I shout, hey, I'm here, guys, I'm here in LA. And in this world of social internet network connectivity, what is your best practice on taking your current, people are listening, financiers and producers may be listening. How do you push your product?
That's a very interesting question, because if any financiers and producers are listening, please tag my socials so they can contact me and fund me. Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm kidding. No, I think that's a very interesting question, because the paradigm is shifting again, and really nobody really knows how to get things funded right now, because yes, there is a traditional model. If you have a representative, if you have representation, if you have an agency, if you can package a product to their liking, yes, they can sell it for you. But again, with the strikes and everything, with the condensation of the studios and everything that's happening, far fewer scripts are being bought, But I also find some advice very dangerous, which is like, take your iPhone and shoot whatever you want and whatnot, which is great if it works for you and if that is the passion that you want to do it. But not every project can be shot like that, or at least in my understanding right now, So there are certain things that, again, going back to the idea of what you can control and what you want to really put out into the world, work on that. I think, oh God, how could I forget his name? The creator of BoJack Horseman, he said something. He's like, you can spend all your life creating treatments, or you can create a proof of concept or an animation and put it out into the world. So if it is in your means to do something, then do it. If it's just writing treatments or stories, do it and put it out. If it's on WhatsApp or Wattpad or a blog or whatnot, put it out if that feels right for your content. If not, if you have the means, create a film. iPhone, short film, get your friends together and create a film and see if you can get some eyes on it. I think there is still relevance to film festivals, to meet people like we met at Tasveer. There is relevance to film festivals. Even if you might not be able to sell your films in film festivals, you meet people and these connections will help you sometime down the lane. And if you have the means and support system, persist. Persist with your art, persist with what you're doing, persist in your vision. And over a period of time, you will find a gut feeling. Going back to what you said, if you're a stand-up comedian or a comic, you get to experience how the audience is perceiving you. But when you're a writer, you don't. You are your first audience, and that is true. And your gut will tell you if something is working, if the flow is working or not. And out of all the writing paradigms, there is Save the Cat, there is that, there is this, which I've read, I love. There is something that is far more important that Guillermo del Toro says. He's like, the most important thing for a script is flow. And only you and your gut can gauge the flow, because that depends on your sensibility.
You set the tempo. Nobody can read the tempo.
Exactly. Yeah. And that is where, read as much as you can about screenwriting, read about writers. Creativity Inc. is a great book. Read about all people and their experiences. Sidney Lumet's book. Read, keep yourself invested in all of that. And, keep creating if you have the resources and means. And
absolutely.
Hopefully things will happen.
Thank you so much. And with such a director that I love, and being an actor primarily myself, what are the things that you look in actors when you're casting them? Because actors are very sensitive people. With rejection. They generally are not like, they take it very personally. I am not someone, it's very hard. I've learned like over time how to not take things personally, rejection, whether it's in acting or anything else. But then as a director, what are you looking in an actor?
I think just to address that, what you said, like rejection is hard for anybody. It's in the creative profession, yes. It's because we put so much of ourselves into our work. And when somebody is rejecting our work, it almost feels like they are rejecting a part of us. So for actors, for directors, for writers, rejection is hard. And not just in the creative field, in every field, interviews, every time you flunk an interview, it's so personal, right? And coming back to the question of what I look for in actors, at this point in my career, when I've worked with some phenomenal actors, and I feel like of course, accreditation, like if they have some standards that they're already branded, like SAG-AFTRA here is a brand, that means you're really serious about your craft. Sometimes there might be diamonds in the rough, where it might be their first film. Like I've cast a 7-year-old who's never acted before, going on my gut feeling, but I've also supported her with SAG-AFTRA actors, because they need that supporting system. So it's definitely understanding the dynamic between who you're casting as a family and as a unit. And when casting individual actors, one is, can they portray the look and feel, because sometimes they might not speak in a role, but do they look like how I want them to look? It's the character and face feel and all of that. Yeah. And then obviously, how good are they at expressing? Because theater is very different from film. Theater needs to be big, film needs to be small and intimate. So do they understand the intimacies of what they need to, again, this goes back to their SAG-AFTRA or, their dedication to the craft and how much they've done. And this is something that I definitely look for. Of course, I would love to get them to read. And even before that, I love to get them to talk, because for me, the most important thing is how well I know somebody and how I can mold their performance. Because right out of the bat, like an actor comes prepared with what they come prepared with. But after that, are they directable? How much is their, spectrum? How much can they move from one end to the other to play a different thing? So these are all things that I try to gauge when I'm actually talking to them. Yeah. And this I can gauge based on their life experiences. So I like to connect to actors on a personal level. Of course, accreditation, SAG-AFTRA, the body of works that they've done, seeing their varied work, and obviously to get a sense of them in my character.
A lot of actors do this mistake. When they go to auditions, new actors, right? Typically what happens is they will ask you to do something else, some other way. Mm-hmm. Typically new actor gets into the trap of, I did something wrong, rather than thinking he is or she is testing whether I am good at taking directions, whether I can move in a separate direction slightly here or that or not. And it was easy for me to understand this in a tech interview space where I was like, oh, the follow-up question is just for me to see how I'm thinking in a different direction. Yeah. But when it's acting, right? The difference between actors and director writers, actor always thinks their face and body is the product, when that is not the truth. Yeah. Their emotion and their presence in the moment and understanding is the product.
It's always the internal language. Like people, some of the greatest actors like Amitabh Bachchan sir or even Chiranjeevi sir, Rajnikant sir, they can just stay in front of a camera, like even Clint Eastwood for that matter. Like their face, there's so much turmoil going on inside. And that is what we are trying to capture with film always, right? So,
True. How do you see VFX getting cheaper, more efficient, faster? Yeah. With AI and advancements? Are you already seeing these applications? Are directors thinking in that direction?
I don't know. I'm pretty sure they are. Like if, especially the studios, if they can squeeze money out of something, they will. And that is the nature of capitalism. And that is not to slight anything, but that is the nature of a for-profit organization.
Absolutely.
Right? And I have no qualms with that because we have benefited from using AI in small terms. Like if you take VFX, one thing that had always to be done is rotoscoping. Like if there is something going on behind, tracking each actor out or each person out. And AI has helped us in leaps and bounds image processing. Now with one click, you can separate out the background. But AI is great when it aids us to do something and makes the artist's life easier. But the problem comes when some actors are trying to use AI to replace human work. And that is the bigger problem. Like when individual artists use AI, it is almost always to ease their workflows, to better their end product, and to create something of value. But sometimes most of it, again, I'm clubbing studios as this big bad entity. Studios have their place in this world. But when sometimes who are driving profit and who want to, squeeze every penny out of it, when they use AI to replace artists, and it is not just the rotoscoping of the background, completely replace the artist who's doing the rotoscoping, that is where the problem is. And until that is addressed, and the balance between the human component and the AI component is addressed, I think there's going to be a struggle of really using AI to create art. So I feel like it will inevitably happen because it's a cheaper alternative. Yeah. But we definitely need to find a balance between the human side of things and the commerce of it.
So taking the human part out of the equation, going to your original passion of animation, does it change anything in animation? Because now you can just prompt and create like, I could say something personal about my childhood and create a very nice anime, then hum on another app that will create a very nice background. How do you see that kind of filmmaking? Should it be respected?
I think so. I mean, there is no reason not to respect an art form because somebody has invested their life energy into it. But I think it will have a space. Right now, I mean, if we are talking about the realities of things, AI is nowhere near to give us a finished product, but it will get there the way it is growing exponentially. And I think there should be a space for it. And if we are so afraid of talking about AI in art, that we won't acknowledge the growth of it and we won't create a space for it. And that'll become a bigger monster because it'll eat up all other spaces. And if we can really contain the use of that AI to, AI film festivals or AI branded channels, it'll be great. It'll be a great relaxation for common people to explore their artistic side, because everybody is an artist. Like everybody in honesty is a jack of all trades, because our lives are so colorful. And to express that, AI will give us the platform. But that doesn't mean there is always a place for movies like Dune 2, which has to be enjoyed on an IMAX screen. Christopher Nolan's, the Rajamoulis of the world will always exist, and their content will always thrive. But we have to create the right spaces and respect those spaces.
I'm so glad that you are not restricting your expression to the medium on which the expression is communicated. That tells me that you are very clear about expressing what you need to express. And that has been the theme of the entire interview and this chat, actually, Kalyan. I think this wasn't just a chat. This was more of a masterclass for me into how filmmaking
lofty words. No, we are still.
But
then just two people, two creatives.
Absolutely. And the most fun I had was having the debate around things that are not fixed, because as you and I both understand, film and filmmaking is one of the most under or unregulated industries. There are no set rules, and that is why it also has the potential to be the most innovative industry.
Yeah, I mean, the democratization of filmmaking right now is the most exciting thing.
Absolutely.
Or else technology, enabled me to come from Bits Pilani, in Rajasthan to Los Angeles to USC.
Absolutely.
It was all because of technology. So I'm very excited about the use of technology, the regulated and right use of technology.
Absolutely. And with that, I want to say this is not the end of the podcast, but beginning of another relationship with a creative that now I respect more than I did before I started the interview. And I wish you all the best for your pitch tomorrow at Tasveer Film Festival. Shout out to Tasveer. I think those guys are taking really good care of the hard work that you're putting in.
Any South Asian filmmaker, look up Tasveer. They are an amazing entity. They are the only Oscar qualifying South Asian Film Festival in the US. They have an amazing film fund, amazing people running it. So definitely look up Tasveer.
Awesome. And good luck for all your feature films as well. Hope to...
Likewise, extending the same for Jagat and every other project that's coming your way.
Thank you so much. Awesome. Thank you so much, Kalyan.
Perfect. And thank you.